Happy Halloween! I am the long-suffering Mariners fan.
And I am Cruella De Vil.
And you are watching Varsity360. How lovely of you to make our acquaintance. Who do we have the pleasure of having visit us today?
You can't tell who I am?
I don't know. You strike a chord of familiarity.
My name is Cruella De Vil. My Dalmatians are outside.
Well, I shall be wary of them. It is nothing of what I've gone through in the last 10 days. I am 48 years of Mariners baseball hurt embodied.
My condolences to you and your Mariners.
Thank you very much. It has been a rough few days here, but we will persevere until the inevitable happens and we lose again. All right. What brings you to our humble abode?
Well, I was traveling through Vancouver, getting stopped while all of that Main Street construction going on, and I thought, you know, I would love to talk about some high school football. So I have learned quite a lot from your show and the work that is done by that staff, and so I figured I'd drop by and possibly make an appearance on Friday night at a football game.
Excellent. Well, we have an absolutely ghoulish slate of football games this weekend. It is the final week of the regular season. Some teams will see their seasons head to the cemetery, while others will continue to scare up postseason bursts. So let's talk about some of these teams, including one that has risen from the grave.
Excellent.
All right. In the 2A Greater St. Helens League, we shall have clarity in a league that typically, is unpredictable. But this year, we know Washougal is the league champion. Columbia River can put itself in a really good spot for a postseason berth if they take care of business against Hudson's Bay, which leads to a big game between Ridgefield and Woodland. And then Mark Morris, currently on the outside looking in, a team that has risen from the grave.
Well, I'm a fan of the Monarchs already because I favor teams that are named after people. So Mark Morris, winners 3 of their last 4 games, a team that started 0-4 in September. But you know what? I've heard such tremendous things about second-year coach Mike Peck. I heard he was at Prairie at one point.
He was.
I believe, yes. And so Dayton Morris had a tremendous rushing attack last week in the win over Woodland, 2-time league champions, if I'm not mistaken. Coming into the game. So if the Monarchs take care of business against that arch rival R.A. Long, named after another human being, I might add, then they will be rooting for those potatoes, I believe, in Ridgefield.
That is the land of the Spuds.
Okay.
The Spuds. Do not throw any shade towards someone they call King Spud.
Well, I am a favor of tiebreakers because that is all chaos. And so I know that they'll be rooting hard for those Spuds. Those
taters.
Yes.
Yes. All right. There are teams that, like my beloved Mariners, are frankly haunted. They, in recent years, maybe have made it to the playoffs like my Mariners, but just can't seem to win. Now, this one program that we have such affinity for, they have actually won, unlike my Mariners, namely a state championship in 2004. But since then, they have made it to the Week 10 postseason, the state preliminary round 6 times and have lost all 6. Can our Evergreen Plainsmen this year finally make it past and exercise those demons and win a postseason game?
Well, I believe so, first and foremost. You're right. This program, while it has some tradition in its past, This team in this program has not won a playoff game since winning the state championship back in 2004. I believe that was an undefeated season, if memory recalls from all my research. But there is talent galore with this Evergreen team. Started off league play rough on the road at Kelso. Tough place to play, tough place to get the calls. But ever since then, they've been playing well. Now, they've already locked up a postseason berth. Them getting a home game, though, for Week 10, because it's a seeding committee, I'm not sure I see that. I think Kelso, the league champion, is going to get the home game in Week 10. So if Evergreen is going to win a postseason game, it's more than likely going to be on the road. Still, it can be done. You look over the last 5 years, and their head coach, Christian Swain, will be the first one to say this. There have been moments and there have been times when they have fallen short of expectations. I remember a couple of years ago, I believe it was, where they upset Mountain View. First time in a number of years they beaten Mountain View and then lost to the same Thunder team in a tiebreaker. There have been games when you figured they were the prohibitive favorite and then ultimately fell short. In my opinion, I think they were the better team last year when they faced Stanwood at home, ultimately losing. So there's a lot of drive and determination with these Plainsmen to actually get it done.
And I think they have the individual talent and the playmakers that can take over a game. It's just a question of will they? And I think obviously it's going to go a lot into the matchup and what kind of opponent the seeding team or seeding committee draws for them. But this is as good of a chance as Evergreen probably has had in a while.
Well, I'll say this. For any of our postseason teams out of the 3A Greater St. Helens League, you want to avoid O'Day, Eastside Catholic, pivotal powerhouses up north. There seems to be, shall we say, a curse when it comes to our teams facing teams out of the Metro League in Week 10. Over the last 10 years, there have only been 3 teams out of the 3A Greater St. Helens to make it past the first round. Columbia River back in 2015, the last time then the Chieftains were a 3A program. Mountain View on its way to the state semifinals. And then you remember Prairie a couple years ago under former coach Mike Peck, probably 2 plays away from making the state quarterfinals. So it's tough to win a playoff game out of the 3As, but not unachievable.
Yeah, well, all curses are meant to be broken.
Yes.
But, well, we shall see if, although these local teams can have a fate that better befalls them than my beloved Mariners. Mm-hmm. Monster matchups, that's what we love to hear. That's what we have coming up in Week 9, final week of the regular season, and there's some good ones. We got La Center versus Seton Catholic, one of the best Trico League rivalries we can remember in a long time. We have the resurgent Heritage Timberwolves against Prairie with a postseason berth possibly on the line. And then we have some scary Tigers in Battleground facing Union again with possibly a postseason berth on the line. Let's start with La Center and Seton. This has been a clash of the Titans in the Trico League the last 2 years. La Center winning the league title, their 5th in a row 2 years ago. Seton scaring away the bad beast, the Wildcats last year en route to a berth in the state championship game. Once again, they are undefeated in league play heading into a Week 9 matchup. This is scary for many reasons, namely get there early. Parking spots they're going to be as rare as a angel in a cemetery.
Oof, I like it. I think this is a matchup that everyone predicted at the start of the season would happen. I believe on this show, is that right? I think it was. Yes. Yeah, I believe I remember hearing about the Catholics versus the Wildcats in Week 9. So 3rd straight year, this is going to be a matchup. It is going to be on turf, which who does that favor? It depends on who you're looking at matchup-wise. I think these are very different styles, although La Center last week definitely had a big game from Landon Randall, their standout tight end. So 100 rushing yards and over 100 passing yards for that senior. So John Lambert's Wildcats, traditionally, when he first got there, they were that double wing, let's just pound the ball, pound the rock. Now we're starting to see Le Center air it out a little bit more. So I think it's going to be, depending on the forecast as well, I see this being a one-score game. I really do. It's hard to predict who's going to win because, I just don't know. That's why.
Well, I think both teams can make pretty strong cases. I think in Seton's case, they have been on the ascent. They knew there were a lot of questions coming into the season that they knew they had to answer, namely who their playmakers were going to be to replace that great graduating class last year. You knew you had your quarterback position nailed down with Colton Gesser, one of the best in the area. But frankly, we were a little surprised when they lost their season opening game to Columbia River. Now that doesn't seem as much of a surprise based on how good Columbia River has turned out to be. But Seton Catholic, they've rolled through the Trico League. But this is going to be the best team they've faced since really early in the season. And Le Center, they've taken care of business as well. Again, a bunch of questions that I think we needed to have answered for us. But aside from a 1-point loss to state semifinalist Montesano in week 1, they've taken care of business. I like the Wildcats in this matchup, but again, wouldn't be surprised if Seton gets it done.
I'm interested to see the quarterback play. You mentioned Colton Gesser, and he has started since his 9th grade year. 40-plus starts in high school football is an impressive accomplishment. It doesn't matter what level of football you play. Nate Rembish on the other side for Le Center, he's had a fantastic season. Now, he's had a bit of a leg injury as well, so he no longer kicks. He's a 2-time All-League kicker, also their punter, so he's relinquished those duties, also not playing defense at corner right now. But he looked fantastic last week, had no problems running the ball. So, yeah, I like this to be a very close one-score game, and I think it's going to come down to the battle of the quarterbacks.
All right. Can't wait to see it. Another great matchup, Heritage and Prairie, and it's been a long time since we've talked about Heritage and the possibility of a postseason berth here in Week 9, but here are the Timberwolves that started the season 6-0, have coming off a game against Evergreen where even though they lost, they were in that game right until the fourth quarter. But now the Timberwolves can get their first postseason berth since 2011, possibly, if they beat Prairie.
So it's a winner-take-all game, is that right? Yes. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Boy, I think it's really going to come down to how well the T-Wolves stop Devin Viju as this all-around dual-threat quarterback, really great with his legs for Prairie. On the other side, it's how well would they go against that front seven against Heritage? I think Heritage played particularly well in their 10-point loss to Evergreen last week. I think if the ball bounced their way a couple of times, if they got a couple of calls that bounced their way a couple of times, it would have been a much different outcome, and we would be talking about something completely different about Heritage right now. But, nothing beats a winner-take-all Week 9 game.
Yes, and I love this matchup because it's strength versus strength. And you alluded to it. The strength of Heritage has been that defense. It's kept them in games that especially their loss against Kelso, even though their offense didn't score, that defense kept them in it. They have, a great linebacker we profiled earlier, Isaiah James, who's kind of the heart and soul of that defense. But how do you get a dual threat quarterback out of rhythm, which is what Prairie has been able to do when they've been able to rack up some pretty impressive point totals, hitting in all phases of the game. So, strength on strength. I love it.
Keeping the Falcons off the field is going to be key for Heritage. We all know that Prairie can score fast and in bunches and in a hurry. So if that Heritage defense comes to play, I think things are looking good for the white and purple.
All right. And the final one that we'll touch on, Battleground. Battleground, they broke a curse, if you will, in that they beat Skyview for the first time in 20 games last week. It was one of the longest losing streaks between among two programs in Southwest Washington in the past 100 years. And the Tigers, they shook off 4 straight losses, several injuries, and got it done with a big win last week against a Skyview team that we were looking at as possibly being a playoff type of team. But Battleground showed that they're the ones that kind of control their own. Now, they don't control their own destiny fully because they could still win against Union. And if Skyview dusts themselves off and knocks off undefeated or in league play first place Camas, then we have a 3-team tiebreaker and chaos. But if Battleground has put itself in a great position if they take care of business against Union.
So you're saying they're rooting for the Papermakers. How often do the Battleground Tigers root for the Camas Papermakers?
Not all, but you have to get friendly with some ghoulish companions this time of year, especially on October 30th.
You know, it was easy jumping on the bandwagon in September with Battleground. Ethan Adams, now in his, 3rd year as the starting quarterback. I think he got some spot starts as a 9th grader as well, but probably one of his better games. I know he was a bit banged up last game against Skyview, but then all of a sudden BG went on, a 3-game losing streak? And all of a sudden, but now Battleground is playing its best football at the right time and when it matters most.
Well, and they were so impressive defensively, I thought, against a Skyview team that had been scoring points and moving the ball in its previous 2 wins. And so I think the Tigers are playing with a grit, with a toughness, and with, most importantly, a renewed sense of confidence. They felt like those losses they had, they weren't losses where they felt like they were outplayed by a whole lot. It was a play here, it was a play there. It was them leading Camas at one point, or was it, I think it was 8-7 at one point. So they were very much in that game before Camas kind of ran away with it late. So the Battleground Tigers are a team that I think has gone through the fire and has come out stronger on the other side.
I'll be in Southwest Washington for the rest of the week, so I think I might drop by Battleground Union on Thursday. Is that what you said?
It is Thursday.
Thursday, I think I might drop by. Is there a game that you recommend I attend on Friday night, Halloween night?
I think you can take any of them. Would you like to see the entire story of the 4A Greater St. Helens League get told and see the resolution with Camas and Skyview? But one question, are your Dalmatians afraid of tigers?
Oh, half of my Dalmatians right now I'm wearing technically. So,
So they've seen some scary stuff.
They have seen, I give off the shrill of evil to you.
So you're saying they can, they don't scare easily.
I would like to see what a papermaker is, however. That is a very unique mascot.
It is a mean machine.
Okay.
It is not just, this is kind of a Jekyll and Hyde creature. It can be, one moment he's Joe Papermaker, a very humble, very innocent looking boy that, dresses very nicely and kind of a little bit classical. And then there's the mean machine. It comes out and it's a big mechanical device with scary teeth and gears and eyes and everything. So which side of the papermakers you meet will determine your experience.
Well, I like that. I think I will get the full 4A Greater St. Helens League experience Thursday and Friday. If you see me at a game, pregame, I'll be available for pictures.
And me, I just, I still love them, them taters up in Ridgefield. So I'm going to go see how the 2A Greater St. Helens League shakes out with Woodland and Ridgefield, and maybe try to stay off of the bad side of King Spud, the fearsome King Spud up there in Ridgefield.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It has been an absolute delight.
We love making your acquaintance, and thank you for gracing us with your presence. All right, for this brutally honest segment, we are going to talk about the thing that has your phone blowing up because coaches are really fired up about this scheduling announcement that's going to happen over the next 2 years in the 4A Greater St. Helens League. 2 times around, we're going to do a home and home, and I actually am a supporter of it. You have heard from a lot of coaches that do not like this at all. So what are you hearing?
Not only coaches, but players have even reached out over social media, DMing me, just a host of people, even from around the state. I've heard from a couple of folks on the east side in Spokane and Tri-Cities just about this arrangement. But yeah, you said it. So earlier this week, we reported that the 4A Greater St. Helens League teams for the next 2 seasons, at least, will play twice around in league play. So no more just 3 league games starting in mid-October. It will be a complete 6. And the reason behind this, according to Stephen Baranowski, the league president, is because the chief reason they have trouble scheduling games, they meaning the 4A teams. But the reason why it's getting such to be a hot topic issue is, in my opinion, it feels like the 4A, 3A Greater St. Helens League, which, reminder, operates as one league, especially financially. I feel like it's an unhappy marriage between the 4As and the 3As. You look across the state at some of the other multi-classification leagues, most notably Spokane and Tri-Cities. And when it comes to football, mainly, it's a happy marriage. This is how the league operates. And when you look at Southwest Washington, there seems to be this notion of, we don't want to play you, so we're just not going to play you. And so that's led to a host of scheduling issues, most notably for Camas, Skyview, and Union. We mentioned a couple weeks ago the travel struggles that Skyview had, going 1,400 plus miles over 4 September non-league games. The last 2 years, both Skyview and Union have had last-minute week 6 openings, cancellations, whatever you want to call them. And so this idea, in hindsight, fixes that issue. But I don't know if this issue can really be fixed by doing this. And Baranowski noted it's only going to be for 2 years. Once this current classification is over, come 2028, the entire league will look different. But I think what it boils down to is, again, some of these multi-classification leagues are fine having these 3A, 4A crossover games, while down in Southwest Washington, there's this reluctance to do so, most notably on the part of the 3As. So not all the 3As are against it, but a good portion of them are. So, and there seems to be this huge gap right now. And so that's why I think, in my opinion, the league right now is in a bit of an unhappy marriage when it comes to football.
Well, I think the basis of that dysfunction is really rooted in the recent history where there has been this huge gap, especially in football, between what type of teams a Skyview, a Union, a Camas can put on the field, and what type of teams a Heritage. Maybe that's not the best example of how well Heritage has turned that thing around in recent years. But there's typically if you go back over the last decade, been a pretty big gulf in how competitive those teams are in football. But for me, I think it's an unideal situation and almost a desperate situation where you talk about this increasing trend of not being able to fill your whole schedule of, in Skyview's cases, traveling over 1,400 miles to fill their non-league schedule by going on the road. And then also the increased travel costs. And you put all those two together, and I was the one that was talking earlier in the season about, why don't they just stay local, do a home and home with their league rivals, and then you solve the travel issue, you solve the scheduling issue. Maybe coaches will think that guy's crazy. He's never sat in our shoes, and it doesn't quite work as well as that. But to me, it just makes sense in a non-ideal world that we are living in.
And I think that's what it comes down to, is it's not ideal, but this is the situation that the league is in right now. And if you can do anything for 2 years, this would be it. When the news first came out, and I'm making calls to coaches and whatnot, my first reaction was, man, this is brutal for Battleground. Because in a league where you have perennial power, Skyview, Union, Camas doing well in the postseason, Battleground has had more tough seasons than not in recent years. They've only in the last decade have had 2 league wins against Camas Skyview Union. Now, that can be number 3 Thursday night when they place Union, and they could be in the postseason for the second time in 3 years under Mike Woodward, who's done a fantastic job, he and his staff, over the last several years of getting Battleground to a better competitive level night in and night out against those other 3 4A schools locally. But yeah, my first reaction was, now you got to play them twice, not just once, but twice. And so that's why there's this reluctancy from the coaches. And look, I reached out to the coaches as well. They're not really thrilled with this either. And so you might not like it, no. But in the current situation that they're facing, this is the best case scenario. And I say that loosely because what other scenario is there without grabbing the 3As and forcing them to play a much wider schedule? Now, week 6 is already going to have that 4A, 3A league crossover game. But again, for this to be more of a happy marriage, it would need to be 2-3 weeks of this, possibly 4, to make it work. And I know there's some schools and some administrators in the league on the 3A side who feel that they're there just to make lives easy for the 4A, to be a pawn in the scheduling game. And you know what? Again, it operates as one league. And so why are we having this issue of not having a happy marriage right now?
Well, I think that needs to, I think it fixes itself when the larger tide of the 3A in football gets better. I think it just still comes down to what happened. I remember so many recent years when there has been a 3A, 4A matchup and it's been a running clock.
Right. Yep.
And so, but one thing I'm curious about is maybe I just have this huge blind spot here, but why are coaches so against playing a team twice in 1 year, even in a league setting? I mean, yeah, you mentioned Battleground, where in a typical year, Battleground, it wouldn't go well if they had to play Skyview and Camas twice, but Battleground's better now. Say whatever is happening this year with the teams in the 4A being fairly evenly matched, wouldn't that be kind of a good case scenario for the next 2 years if that continues? I
understand why they're reluctant to get on board with this, because would you rather play a league opponent twice or try to better yourselves by scheduling different opponents if your end goal is that postseason? And it's the end goal for every team and every coach that you talk to is getting past that week 9 and into the week 10 and beyond. So if by doing that, you're scheduling Olympia or you're scheduling Graham-Kapowson or maybe going north up into Seattle to find some opponents. But that's where the travel issue comes in. And we all know that in public education right now, they're hamstrung when it comes to budgets. There's being cuts made left and right. And for example, Camas had to fundraise nearly $10,000 to send its freshman team, not its varsity, its freshman team, to go play Coeur d'Alene. Think of all the thousands of dollars that Skyview had to do for an overnight trip to Eagle, Idaho in week 1, which included a hotel trip. So again, I understand where the coaches are coming from. Now, from a schematic thing, I think it's somewhat intriguing, right? How the first matchup go around, what changes do you make in the second go around? For people like us, we're going to talk about storylines. What worked in the first game? We're going to see a couple weeks break, and then you're going to play that same opponent the second go around. So currently, right now, this is not being done. This double round robin format is not being done statewide. Now, it has been done up in Whatcom County in the 1As, because for years, it has just been Mount Baker, Linden, Christian, Nooksack Valley, and Meridian is the 4 1A schools in what's a 3A, 2A, 1A combo league in the Northwest Conference. And so they traditionally do a double round robin because of their geographical isolation. And so we're essentially in that geographical isolation ourselves in Southwest Washington. Yes, we're in the Portland metro area, and it's not easy. Some people think, well, it's just a stone's throw away from Portland, go schedule Oregon teams. Well, that's part of the problem too, because a lot of these Oregon teams have bailed on their 2-year agreements, most notably McKay out of Salem, bailing on Battleground after Battleground traveled to Salem last year in week 4, deciding, hey, you know what, thanks, but we're not going to make the return trip. And so that ultimately has led to this reluctant solution in what we have right now. Again, it's only going to be for 2 years. I think the league, again, like I mentioned, is going to look much different in the next 2 years. We're going to see a lot of jumping around between the 3As and 4As, and especially possibly, most likely, a new team in the 3As coming up from 2A.
Yeah, and I don't think this travel issue is going away. I think it's all fair and good, and it's worked in, the past decade, where teams have basically gone out and stacked their schedule with a ton of really tough opponents from, the Spokane area, from Idaho, from the Puget Sound area. But I remember when we were talking about Skyview and Columbia River breaking off their long-standing rivalry, and one of the points that was made, kind of arguing why that rivalry should have stayed, is that, well, what about the JV and now we have to go find another JV game. And so for me, it's hard enough to schedule varsity contests out of the area. You see, cancellations, you see increasing costs. Doesn't it not make it better for all levels of a football program to stay local and have, now you get games that you can rely on, especially for your JV and freshman teams.
Right, and really that is how it's done in the sub-varsity levels, more or less, right? Not every year you're going to fundraise a team to go to Coeur d'Alene. You're going to try and do a home and home with the JV and the freshman team. So that's more common. Mm-hmm. But yeah, from the bank accounts perspective, absolutely. Think of the bigger gates that you're going to have. Coeur d'Alene coming here, Monroe coming here to play Camas. They're not going to bring as big of a crowd as a Battleground or a Skyview or a Union when they all face each other. So yeah, from the bank's perspective, absolutely, that's a great thing. You're going to get a great crowd, a great atmosphere, and it's going to bring in a lot of dough for the league.
Well, and I think you were talking about Coach Matheson, who's started his career up in that part of the state where they've had these home and homes, and kind of one of the things I think he talked about was that if you have a really good league, you're going to beat up on each other, and it kind of can hurt you in the seeding. So it's sort of a two-sided coin of, if the league is really good, you might take a loss, but you're going to come out of that being kind of battle tested. That's
fair. I mean, I was looking at some of our 3A teams' schedules. I'll use Mountain View as an example. When they traveled to Beaverton to play Mountainside, lost 63-2, and I'm thinking, well, what if Mountain View played Skyview this year? Maybe that's a game that Skyview would have won by 3 or 4 touchdowns. It would have been a better atmosphere, a bigger gate. Again, you have that local versus local opponent. So Evergreen playing Puyallup, a game that they were leading by 2 touchdowns at one point, ultimately lost 48-14. What if Evergreen decided to play Camas? Given the number of weapons that Evergreen has this year, I think against a Camas team that graduated a lot of its firepower skill position wise from last year's state championship runner-up team, that would have been an intriguing matchup as well. I'm just going to come out and say this right now. I've heard from a number of folks at Kelso right now, and we're a year away from the crossovers for 2026. People are already telling me in the building that they're not going to face Camas, if that is indeed
really?
That's, I know, right?
Oh,
and remember,
gosh.
A couple of years ago, Kelso was this close to bailing on the league and joining the 2A Evergreen Conference. Similar situation with Shelton's doing right now, basically a 3A school in a 2A league. They decided to pull out at the last second, but you know what? Nothing would put it past me again if Kelso looks at this and says, maybe we're better off traveling a little bit more if it's a better overall experience for our kids to play in a 2A league versus constantly being looped in with the Vancouver and Evergreen and Battleground district schools.
Well, I mean, from their perspective, if it's not really that much more of a time or travel commitment to go to Chehalis Centralia for, if they were going to join that conference and play some of those teams, than it is to come down here. So I think there's always going to be pros and cons to everything. And I think it's the best solution in a unideal situation.
Yes.
And I'm curious to, I'm glad coaches are voicing their frustrations and their concerns with it, but for me, it's a thing of trade-offs. Would you trade what's coming for what has been, and looking at, some of the travel hurdles and some of the, cancellations and the difficulties in filling the schedules. For me, I just think, maybe it's not ideal, but there's a reason I think it makes sense for the next 2 years.
I was talking with Matt Evans, my guy over in the Tri-Cities. If you don't follow him on social media, do so. He is fantastic for high school football statewide. And he estimated there's been about 50 forfeits / cancellations / hey, we're not going to play you. And that is a really high number. And we're talking about across all 6 classifications. So yes, there is a problem over the last recent years, including in Southwest Washington, with teams scrambling to find opponents last minute, with opponents like a Decatur, what they did to Skyview, canceling basically 36 hours before the game, determining that they weren't going to come down for Skyview's homecoming game. So this situation eliminates the uncertainty of what we have been seeing when it comes to last-minute cancellations. We're giving kids a chance to play, and that ultimately is the goal. We want every team to have a guarantee of 9 games, and if you get more past that, then that's fantastic. But at least this gives them a 6-game guarantee with local teams that they know and they're familiar with, that they know are not going to bail on them.
But people hate change.
Exactly.
That's where I think this come from. But, the only constant is constant change. And we are in a situation where some of the issues that have now arisen in recent seasons maybe weren't that big of a deal 10 years ago, but I don't think they're going away.
Nope.
No. All right. Well, that's a great way to end this episode. Great discussion. And I think it's going to be something that will make the next 2 years in the 4A and even the 3A Greater St. Helens League really intriguing.